Hi, today we're going to talk about using questions in class and specifically 5 things that I'd like you to have a go with in the classroom. So firstly, why should we think about questions? Do you know how many questions you ask your learners in a single day? On average, teachers ask between 300 and 400 questions in a day. Now that seems rather a lot, but it's what we do. But these questions, they need to be effective in order that they have maximum impact on the learners and on the knowledge that they're gaining from your classroom. So let's look at 5 things to try. The first thing is don't worry about silence. I'm not sure whose quote this is, but it's a good one. Learners on average need between 5 and 15 seconds to think before they answer a question. They might need to think of the content of their answer. They might need to think about how to formulate the answer, how best to express it in words. So they need time. Some learners are quicker than others, obviously, but unfortunately, teachers on average allow about a second, which is not nearly enough. Teachers often feel uncomfortable with a bit of silence and like to fill the silence with another question or a bit more detail. Learners don't need that. Stop. Let them think. It's okay for a bit of silence. They need the time to think before they answer. It also enables all learners in the classroom to have an equal chance to answer a question, especially if you've got learners in the classroom who like to answer quicker than anyone else. So make sure your learners know not to call the answer out if they know it, or as soon as they've thought of it. Give them a time limit, a clear time limit, so that they know when you're going to ask them to answer. So it could be a specific number of seconds. It could be while I finish cleaning the board or while I hand this handout out. Let them think and let them know when you are going to ask them. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I think it's Albert Einstein who said that. I'm not sure. Anyway, it is very true. Pictures help learners think of ideas, particularly visual learners, because they provide a basis for conversation. They help learners think of things that they might not have thought about, or they give extra ideas to learners. And if you use some incisive questions along with the pictures, this can significantly expand learners' knowledge. So it's really important to think about the types of questions you're going to ask your learners when you give them the pictures. You can have learners come up with questions that they could ask other groups when you give them a picture. So you could have each group with a different picture. They brainstorm their questions and then they go round and ask each other different questions based on the pictures that they have. You could have a picture on the board as they come in and just have them chat about it as a warmer at the start of the class. There are lots of different ways you can use pictures, but they're very effective. Try using one in one of your classes. Another great quote. It's not the answers you give, but the questions you ask. It is good to get learners thinking about how to ask questions. they need to learn because they need to use them in natural conversation as well. So what you could do to take the pressure off you a little bit is have them come up with the questions. You could give them the answer to a question and have them brainstorm the question itself. It'll help them think of the right word order. It'll help them think of different ways of asking questions, because very often there will be more than one way to ask the same question to get the same answer. And when there are differences, you can have a discussion with your learners about the difference in the questions. Is there a difference in focus, in time? It's really useful for them. But make sure that the answers that you give them aren't too ambiguous, because then they might struggle to come up with the right question. Now, often we don't want all the learners to answer at the same time, but sometimes it's good. So yes, it can be a nightmare when they all call out at once. Particularly this happens when a teacher asks an open question and they all shout out. We don't like that, but it can be useful, not in that way, in other ways, to see who knows an answer and who doesn't. To do it effectively, you could use mini whiteboards or post-it notes or coloured paper or sticks that they hold up, true-false cards that they hold up, and so on, so that you can ask a question, give them a few seconds, and ask them all to show their answer at the same time. So at once you can look around the room and see who knows the answer and who doesn't. If you like using technology, you could use online polls, forms, virtual quizzes, word clouds. There are so many different options. It helps the learners to improve their digital skills, while at the same time giving you answers that you can look back on later. And it can help to inform your teaching as well. Using a variety of different techniques keeps the learners on their toes. So sometimes you might want to ask some questions individually. Sometimes you want all of them to answer at the same time in a controlled way, like the examples given. And finally, it's really good to get feedback in order to feed forward. What I mean is, don't be afraid to ask your learners for their feedback. A lot of teachers are concerned about this. They feel that if they're asking learners for their feedback, it reflects badly on them as teachers, like they don't know what they're doing. But learners appreciate their opinions being asked for. They feel valued. They feel that they're involved in their educational process. They don't see you as being a weak teacher. They see you as being a proactive teacher. So do get their feedback. It will help. It helps to inform future planning, whether or not to use an activity again, whether to adapt an activity, what works for the learners, what doesn't work, so that you can plan your lessons so that they have the most impact on their learning. Obviously, don't be disheartened if something doesn't work. You could make improvements and try again. Try tweaking the activity a little bit. Don't scrap it completely just because the learner said they didn't like it. Have another go. Use it in a different way. And again, get their feedback to see if the tweaks that you've made have worked, have had an impact. And Consider the questions that you ask your learners in order to get their constructive feedback. Get them to think about what worked, what the result of the activity is, how it's helped them to think, what changes would make it more effective. Okay, so not a simple "did you like it?" because that doesn't really help you. So I hope those tips have helped you. Thank you for watching.